From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good morning, buenos días. Por favor, siéntense. Y por favor, cierren los teléfonos celulares y equipos electrónicos. Okay, we shall begin. My name is Georgette Dorn, and I'm the chief of the Hispanic Division of the Library of Congress. And we're co-sponsoring this event with the Center for the Book. And we're so pleased to, again, have the America's Award here, and Julie Klein from the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. I believe this is the 15th year that we have the award here at the library, and it is a great pleasure to celebrate these wonderful books. And of course, I especially want to welcome Julia Alvarez, and Carmen Tafolla, and Magaly Morales. And now I will turn it over to Ann Boni, who will talk about the Center for the Book.
Thanks, Georgette, and welcome to the Library of Congress, everyone. It's a beautiful day, and we're so glad you could come. I'm standing in today for John Cole, the director of the Center for the Book. He's in San Francisco on an emergency meeting with one of our reading promotion partners, so we're delighted to once again be able to be here to host the America's Awards. The Center for the Book was created in 1977 to stimulate public interest in books, reading, libraries, and literacy. And this is one of the ways we do that. We get to host programs such as this where we bring authors and readers and writers together. We work with state centers throughout the United States. Every state has a state center, the DC, and the U.S. Virgin Islands is our latest state center. We also work with reading promotion partners of national organizations, nonprofit organizations, government agencies in projects that would promote reading and literacy. We have a pivotal role in the National Book Festival, organizing the author program and managing the Pavilion of the States, where people from the state center coordinators, state librarians, state humanities council staff come and pass out literature and just talk with the thousands of people that come through the pavilion each year. We have been reaching out to young readers for a long time through our Letters About Literature, Reading, and Writing contest and through River of Words Art and Poetry Environmental Contest. More recent efforts at outreach include the creation of the position of the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. The ambassador is named by the librarian based on recommendations from a selection committee made up of segments of the book community. The first ambassador was John Cheska, and he served from January 2008 until January 2010, when the second ambassador, Catherine Patterson, was nominated, and she is in the middle of her 2-year term. The last new thing that we've done is we administer the Young Readers Center, which opened officially just a year ago, but we have doubled the staff and doubled the space, and it's been one huge success. And I know you're going over there. I think Georgette's taking you over there following this meeting, and you will really be impressed, I bet. You can find additional information about any of these programs on our new website, www.read.gov. And that's about it for today. If you want to talk after the show, I'll be here. And thank you for coming. And I would like now to introduce Julie Klein. Julie?
Say hello.
Hi.
Good morning. This is Andy Klein, my son.
Hi.
Okay. I purposely put him on camera so I have this record on the webcast every year of the fact he can see over the podium now, which is a huge thing. Very nice to see you all here this morning. My name is Julie Klein. I'm at the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which has helped coordinate the Americas Award for Children's and Young Adult Books since its inception in, 1993. And it's a pleasure to be here to recognize winners of the 2010 Americas Award. The book, What Can You Do with a Paleta? ¿Qué puedes hacer con una paleta? Written by Carmen Tafolla and illustrated by Magaly Morales. And also, Julia Alvarez, thank you, who's away from the signing table now, return to sender. I should say that What Can You Do with a Paleta was published by Tricycle Press in 2009 and returned to sender by Knopf Random House. I think you've had a lot of action with these books this year already. Magaly and Carmen are just coming from the Tomas Rivera Award ceremony, where the book was recognized just this past week, along with being, I think, at the Texas Book Festival. Julia received the Pura Belpré Authors Award from the American Library Association of Reforma. I didn't know that Oprah had a kids' reading list, but apparently it's on there too. And it's also been published in Spanish as a paperback as Devolver a Remitente, which I do a lot of educational outreach working with language teachers, and they will be thrilled to have one more novel in Spanish they can be using with their classes. And Carmen, Charlotte Zolotal Award for writing with the book. You may not know it, but the First Lady of Wisconsin, Jessica Doyle, it's selected as a read-on Wisconsin book, What Can You Do with a Paleta, which is my state, so that's kind of nice, as well as being recognized in CCBC Choices by the Cooperative Children's Book Center in Madison. Stop. At least I don't have to hold him up here, which I used to have to do. Head up. A little background on the Consortium of Latin American Studies programs, which sponsors the award. CLASP is an organization that supports Latin American Studies programs at universities, teaching and outreach. And the award, as I said, goes back to 1993, and we recognize up to 2 awards each year for primary and secondary reading levels, given in recognition of U.S. published works of fiction, poetry, folklore, or selected nonfiction, everything from picture books to books for young adults, that authentically and engagingly portray Latin America, the Caribbean, or Latinos in the U.S. By linking the Americas, the intent is to reach beyond geographic borders, as well as multicultural international boundaries, focusing instead upon cultural heritages within the hemisphere. In determining the award, books are judged for distinctive literary quality, cultural contextualization, exceptional integration of text, illustration, and design, and potential for classroom use, which I think is another twist that makes this award just a little bit different. We see a lot of use by the commended list by both classroom teachers as well as librarians using it for collection development. I'd like to, if I could, introduce the members of the 2010 Americas Committee who are here. Crystal Foster in the back, if you want to stand up, Crystal. University of Arizona, Sunnyside Unified School District, I can tell you. Jamie Naidu isn't here from University of Alabama, and he's the chairperson, and please, all of you remind me, I promised to get his book signed. Do not let me forget to get Jamie's book signed, because he really wanted to be here, but he teaches a weekend class. Ruth Quiroa from National Louis University in Illinois. Also not with us from Madison, Wisconsin, Madison West High School now, Hollis Rudiger. And we do have 3 additional members of the committee, all rolled into one here. Elena Serapiglia, with twins due in December. And they look fairly well rested and calm now, but this committee read, we figured, about 70 books, and as you see from the display, it's everything from picture books to young adult novels. So they had a lot of evenings reading and quite a few Sundays with Skype calls and conference calls to talk about the award. And as happens every year, for many of us, it's the first time to actually meet face-to-face because the committee is spread across the country. I did want to just mention, because I thought it'd be fun to do, you may have noticed that one of the picture books back there is on the childhood of Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She couldn't make it today, but I invited her. She sent, and you can see it, I'll put it back there, a really nice regrets letter, which I thought was a really nice touch. I invited her. I thought it was just up the street, after all, the Supreme Court. So, but she sent her regrets and appreciated being invited to be with us today. Please spend some time after the program looking at the display of books from the full commended list at the back of the room. We also have book sales by busboys and poets in the back, which I think many of you have been taking advantage of, but I still see high stacks, so more sales would be welcome, and we will do some more book signing after the event. Julia started signing early because she'll be leaving on the early side. One additional thing we like to do with the award when we can is schedule a school visit the day before. Carmen got to spend time with about 60, 70 third graders at Bancroft Elementary School yesterday, and it sounded like it was a fun time. So thanks to Bancroft Elementary and Michael McCoy and the third graders. Final list of thanks besides the committee and the Consortium of Latin American Studies programs, the Hispanic Division, the Center for the Book, and special events and public programs here at the Library of Congress, especially Paul Mazzacci, Cynthia Costa, Georgette Dorn, John Cole, and Ann Boni, Random House for supporting Julia's travel, my Center for Latin American Studies at UW-Milwaukee, Busboys and Poets, Deborah Menkart, Don Allen, and Yasmin. And something I'm really pleased about that you'll note at the bottom of the program, did you know there were so many Latin American Studies programs at universities in the US? I mentioned that CLASP is supported by member institutions like ours. And this year we just had, I believe it was 6 to 8 centers, and I'm going to read them off so they know we gave them proper recognition, who purposely put extra money, most of them into U.S. Department of Education Title VI proposals to help support this event, and that includes The Ohio State University, Stanford University, Tulane, Vanderbilt, Yale, University of Connecticut, University of Florida, and the University of New Mexico. And I failed to mention, just because it's a rarity too, we actually have a new member of the Americas Committee who will be starting with us. When I said Tulane, I remembered it. Denise Woltering Vargas, you'll see in the next 3 years, hopefully, at the award ceremony, just starting her term. And I list out the different centers because in addition to supporting Latin American studies at universities, CLASP is really devoted, and many of our centers are, to educational outreach for K-12 and post-secondary audiences. So we do a lot of teacher programs. We do a lot of teacher programs to support the study of Latin America, the Caribbean, and languages in the classroom. And I think this kind of support from national centers is one more example of the kind of commitment that's out there for Latin American studies and outreach. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to introduce Crystal Foster.
Good morning. I would like to share with you just a journey through our commended book list. So the America's Book Award commended list this year weaves together a beautiful rebozo of charming characters, history and its heroes, cultural awareness, discovery, and pride. Our weaving begins with flavor, first from a Salvadorian soup of frijoles and fun, and then with a poetic celebration of skin tone from cinnamon to tamarind. We add in tradition with dichos and a quinceañera celebration as Lena and Lola, two Mexican-American girls, joyfully learn about love, loss, family, and fun. More Celebrating joins in as we sing a familiar Christmas song with some Latin zing and celebrate children everywhere in their love of reading. We cherish our abuelas, one who braids her granddaughter's hair and learns with la loteria, another who weaves life and lessons into the stories she shares, and another on the edge of crossing over with angels with the help of butterflies, birds, and her family's love. A lot of history is woven in this year as well. First, as we learn about the distinct cultures of this land before Europeans arrived and challenges our own understandings of the past. And then as our Rebozo comforts those searching for sanctuary when humanity fell apart. First, when Jews found refuge on the island of Cuba, and later with the journey of Guatemalan immigrants moving north. Next, 4 historical figures join in. Diego Rivera, through a collection of beautiful poems telling the story of his life and his art. A young Jorge Luis Borges, as he falls in love with the written word. And a young Pele who falls for football and grows up to be king of the game. This year we are honored to include history in the making as we learn about Sonia Sotomayor, the first Latina judge to be selected to the United States Supreme Court. 3 young men join in next. Marcelo, who negotiates his father's world on the outside and his own unique world within, and Miguel and Eddie, both struggling through their teenage years, challenging society's expectations and figuring out who they are along the way. And finally, our weaving is complete with the youngest characters of the year, Renee and Victoria, sharing how they might seem different, but show us that we actually have more in common than we think, especially when we take time to learn about each other. And we have 2 honorary awards this year. One for I Know the River Loves Me by Maya Cristina Gonzalez, who cannot be with us today. And then one for Gringolandia by Lynn Miller Lackman. If she could come up, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you all for being here today and giving me a chance to talk about Gringolandia. When I speak to groups, particularly high school groups, one of the questions they ask me is, how long did it take you to write this book? And they are astounded when I look at them directly and say, 22 years. This book was 22 years in the making. It started as a young adult contemporary novel, and by the time I finished it in 2007, and it was accepted by Sandy Taylor at Curbstone Press, it had become a young adult crossover historical novel. The story is about a young man, 17-year-old Daniel Aguilar, who's haunted by memories of his past in Chile. He witnessed the midnight arrest and beating of his father under the notorious Pinochet dictatorship. After his father's arrest, he, his mother, and his younger sister fled to the United States to safety, and he started to make a new life in the United States with a rock band and a girlfriend who's the daughter of a local minister. His life changes when his father is suddenly released and rejoins the family, but this is not the father Daniel remembers from before he was arrested. The new father is partially paralyzed and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because of his experience of torture in Pinochet's prisons for 5 years. And the story is about Daniel's struggle to reach his father, to build a relationship with his father, and it's a struggle that brings him to understand who he is as a person as well. Now, over 22 years of writing a novel, I have many people to thank. And I'd like to start with thanking all of my friends from Chile and elsewhere in Latin America, my very good friends who I lived with and worked with in the years during the 1980s when I lived in Madison, Wisconsin, where Gringolandia is mostly set. We worked together to organize concerts of musicians from Latin America. We brought exile musicians who were originally from Chile, living all over the world, and struggling to make a life for themselves in a foreign country and culture. And we brought them to perform. We also brought musicians, a very interesting experience, musicians who were working underground in Chile during the dictatorship, braving death threats and braving censorship and the banning of their music and struggling to survive when it was very difficult for them to find work because they were prominent members of the opposition. And I'd like to, as a gesture of artistic courtesy, I'd like to mention their names. Schwenke Nilo, Eduardo Peralta, Isabel Aldunate, Angel and Isabel Parra, Angel Parra Orego, Tita Parra, Inti Limani, Kila Payun, Banda Bordemar, and Soli Uvia. I'd like to thank Curbstone Press and my editor, Sandy Taylor. Sandy Taylor started Curbstone Press in 1975. His first book that he published was called Santiago Poems, a collection of poetry about the coup and the dictatorship written by James Scully. Gringolandia was the last book that he acquired before he passed away in December 2007. And I'd like to thank the staff and board members of Curbstone Press that kept the book going and continued the production and brought Gringolandia out and marketed it and made sure the Americas Award Committee could have a review copy of the book, despite the fact that their leader was no longer with us. And I'd like to thank the staff of Northwestern University Press, which has adopted Gringolandia, and when the first printing sold out, brought the book back into print, and will be keeping it in print for use in both high schools and colleges, and anyone who wants to read it, young and old. I'd like to thank my readers of all ages, because this is really a true crossover book, and a lot of the people who've come to me to tell me how much they've appreciated it are adult readers as well as teenagers. I'd like to thank the Americas Award Committee for recognizing Gringolandia, and in general for recognizing books published by small presses, because it's very difficult for small press books to get the kind of attention and regard that they deserve. And given the economics of the publishing industry, the brutal economics of the publishing industry, small press books are going to be increasingly important in bringing to light the experiences of people who are out of the mainstream and who have experienced silencing in the past. I'd like to thank the America and congratulate the award winners, Julia Alvarez, who I had the pleasure of meeting at the Pura Bel Pre celebration this past summer at ALA, Magaly Morales and Carmen Tafolla. And I would finally like to thank my family, my husband Richard, who is here, and my 2 adult children who were not yet born when I started writing Gringolandia. When I started writing this book, Chile was still under a dictatorship following the CIA-sponsored coup in 1973. Today, Chile is a thriving democracy with problems, but with a dedication to confronting those problems and working together, as we saw 10 days ago with the remarkable rescue of the 33 miners who were trapped underground for 70 days. What happened in between the restoration of that democracy was the result of the mostly nonviolent struggle and sacrifice of millions of Chileans, people like Daniel and his father in Gringolandia, who showed how difficult it is to get democracy back when a democracy is lost, but how important, how necessary that struggle is, and the fact that it can be done. And we all have to stand up to defend it, to defend our rights, to defend our freedoms, and to defend the dignity with which we treat each other and with which our government should treat us. So in the end, I feel like this award that I am so honored to receive today is not really an award for me. This is an award for the people of Chile who struggled to bring back their democracy between 1973 and 1990. Thank you very much.
Hi and good morning. My name is Elena Serapiglia, and I'm one of the 2010 Selection Committee members for the Americas Award, and I absolutely love being part of this committee. It's been really rewarding for me. First, I wanted to thank Yale University for providing me with travel funds to come here to DC, and also to my employer, Amity Regional School District number 5 in Woodbridge, Connecticut, for giving me the school business day to travel here. And I'd love to thank also the Americas Award committee members who I've really loved meeting, getting to know, and talking with, and also the Library of Congress for doing such a fantastic job at hosting this every year, and of course to Julie Klein, who does a fantastic job as well. More importantly, thanks so much to the wonderful authors and illustrators whose works have been so important and so useful in so many classrooms and so many libraries throughout the country. I get the fun job of getting to thank and introduce both Carmen Tafolla and Magaly Morales for their wonderful book, What Can You Do with a Paleta? ¿Qué puedes hacer con una paleta? So first, a little bit about Carmen Tafolla, who I met for about 2 seconds yesterday afternoon. She's a native of San Antonio, Texas, and earned a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin. She's written for both children and adults, some happy children back there, and she's a widely acclaimed author. She's written both poetry and prose, and again, for both adults and for children. 2 of her other books that I've had the wonderful experience of reading, both because of the Americas Award, are That's Not Fair, Emma Tanayuca's Struggle for Justice, No es justo la lucha de Emma Tanayuca por la justicia, which was published in 2008, which is a book about Emma Tanayuca, a Latina civil rights leader from the 1930s, which was widely acclaimed. And also, What Can You Do with a Rebozo, last year, 2008, from Tricycle Press, which was also widely recognized and really well received. And I should also add that What Can You Do with a Rebozo was on the commended list for the 2009 Americas Awards, so thank you. Those have been great to read. And Magaly Morales was born in Veracruz, Mexico. She's always been interested in the arts, as I read from her website, and had the quick pleasure of meeting her this morning as well. Her illustrations are absolutely beautiful if you've seen any of her other works. Again, this year, as you can see as we circle through again, if you look at Piñata and a Pine Tree, written by Pat Mora and illustrated by Magaly Morales, this is a great version of the 12 Days of Christmas, but with a little bit of Latin flavor, and again, with beautiful illustrations. Now, when you take a wonderful author and a wonderful illustrator, and you put them together, you get, what do you get? You get our winning book. You get What Can You Do with a Paleta? ¿Qué puedes hacer con una paleta? Which is absolutely beautifully illustrated with bright colors, with beautiful prose, and it's just really fun for everybody to read. I had a lot of fun reading it. And I have to say my favorite part was in the very back, looking at the different flavors that you can get. So, great book for younger children too. It's great for their imagination, great for helping readers, and the fact that it's a bilingual book means that it's open to even more people to read. So thank you both for writing it. So Andy, does Andy want to help give out the awards? Yeah? Okay. So first, Andy is going to give the award to Carmen Tafolla.
Thank you very much. I have to tell you that there's a phrase in the Mayan language, Ilakech, you are the other me. It means we're connected. We may live in different barrios and in different bodies, but the spirit inside us is a piece of the whole big spirit, and it's all connected. And that spirit follows us through life, still the same inside, no matter where we go or how we age. Sometimes we see folks in a grand moment like this, a glorious event, a book award or a publication event, and there's applause and there's wonderful gold seals on the books, and it's easy to forget where we were just before this. To forget that the award-winning author and the niño mocosito on the street are filled with the same spirit and share the same glorious sense of inlakech. And I might just be dizzy because I just came up through 6 floors of one in 3 massive buildings in the largest library in the world, but I can't help but think back to the first time I dreamed of being in a library. Because you see, my barrio, my neighborhood, had no library. My barrio was not considered of the quality of people that deserved a library. I grew up in a neighborhood that was looked down upon by people from other neighborhoods, and the schools were not called preferred school districts. They were called the opposite of preferred. They were considered the worst schools in the city because of who the children were that attended them. And the police didn't want to come out to check out anything in our neighborhood because it was considered the rough side of town, the dangerous side of town, or as my papacito used to say, well, maybe it wouldn't be so dangerous if you guys came out here once in a while. And there was no library on my side of town because, as the city council said, people there don't read, they don't even know how to speak English. But the summer I turned 11, the city finally put a library on the west side of town, just 2 miles from our house, and it was filled with books. Yes, they were old books and they were discarded books, but they were books. And I was to find out many, many years later that the books most in demand and most popular in that time period weren't even sent to the West Side Library. In fact, I never saw a copy of The Cat in the Hat until I was an education major in college. Where the Wild Things Are, I found out about in graduate school. But still, there were books there. Dozens and dozens of books. And for someone who dreamed of being a writer, that was heaven. I would check out 5 books at a time. I would devour them rapidly, and then I would have to wait impatiently till the next week when my mother would walk me back the 2 miles to the library. I was so impatient that after I finished reading it once or sometimes twice, I would go back and see if maybe that boring page, there's always a boring page in every book right behind the title page, and it has little numbers and figures and things. It says stupid things like ISBN:0-09, things like that. I thought maybe there's something interesting there, so I would go through that and try and examine it to see if there was some detallito in there that might be interesting, and there was nothing. There was really nothing except that every one of the books said Random House, New York, or Doubleday, New York, or Holt Reinhardt, New York. And I began to think that if you wanted to be a writer, you had to come from New York. You had to write about the kinds of things that were written about in the books. You had to write about the things that we saw in the content of the books, like about the Statue of Liberty in Central Park. And my barrio had no Central Park. I tried to write my first novel, and it went like this. One day, while walking through the middle of Central Park, comma, in New York, comma, and that was it. I was stuck. That was the end of the novel, because I had no clue what you could do in Central Park. I had no clue what it looked like or what was there or what you could write about, and I said, too bad. Too bad, I'll never be a writer. If only I had grown up in New York in someplace important instead of my old barrio in San Antonio, Texas, where there was no Central Park or park at all at the end of the block. At the end of my block, there was a tortilleria. And the tortilleria was a place where an elderly woman sold corn tortillas for a penny each. And it wasn't even a store, it was a house where the front room had a counter. And she sold tortillas from that front counter. And you would go in to order, and this ancient woman would come up to the counter. I'd never seen anybody that old still breathing. And the little kid from down the block would cut line in front of me, slap 7 pennies on the counter, and say, "Siete tortillas, por favor." And the old lady would start to count off the centavitos one by one. Uno, dos. So there was lots of time to stare. And I stared at her face. And her face was brown and wrinkled. It had little squares, little cuadritos. It looked just like the charcos do in the summer when it hasn't rained for a long while and the puddles are cracked into little brown squares. That's exactly what her face looked like. And I said, I know why. I know why she and the dirt look alike. It's because they're the same age. She is the oldest breathing creature on the planet. That's what it is. And then the sun came in through the window and hit her hair, and her hair was so white that it looked like the rays from the sun and the light from her hair were kind of sending vibrations back and forth. They were talking to each other. They were saying, "Oye, ¿cómo te va this century? Oh, it's okay. Last siglo was a bummer. Está bien gacho. This was all right." They were talking to each other. Her hair and the sun knew each other, and I said, I know why. Because they have the same birthday. They're the same age. She is the oldest breathing creature in the solar system. And just then she was saying, "Siete." And I looked at her hands, and they didn't look like hands. They looked like they were made out of the corn masa that she'd been working all day long. And I said, "You mean she's older than Mexican food?" No civilization would be possible anywhere in the universe without Mexican food. She must be the oldest breathing creature in the universe. Yeah, that's what it is. And then she took those 7 pennies and put them in the pocket of her delantal and turned around very slowly to call to the back of the house for help, because when you're the oldest breathing creature in the universe, you deserve a little help. And so she turned around very, very slowly, and she yelled to the back of the house, "Mama!" And her mother came out and helped her turn the tortillas. And I thought I had nothing to write about. Well, too bad. Too bad. Maybe if I had grown up someplace else. But I grew up in this barrio, the non-preferred barrio of San Antonio, the entire west side of San Antonio, the Mexican side of San Antonio. And everyone outside our barrio agreed that we lived in a very bad neighborhood and that it was a great disadvantage to live there. But we children didn't see our barrio that way. We saw Mama's sparkly-eyed smile and Daddy's big shoulders that carried us outside to watch the stars at night. We felt Grandma's warm abrazo, and we smelled the toasty aroma of family suppers. We saw the pretty little houses that didn't all look alike, because one was yellow and one was pink, one was turquoise, whatever color was on sale the month they needed to paint the house. And the yards were growing thick and full of roses and hierbitas and spices, and the people of the neighborhood called everyone mijita and mijito, my daughter, my son. And while pockets were frequently empty, everyone's lives were full of dreams. We were too poor to own anything more than our dreams, so we held on to our dreams. I'd like to show you some photos from my barrio. A ver. A ver. Thank you. Because I'd like you to see a little bit about what we saw. Okay. We had lots of cute little casitas, very cute and individual, with a lot of creativity and many unique little gardens, no one standard for how you make a garden grow. And I was proud of my barrio because we had lots of family and extended family. We had cousins and friends and cousins who were best friends. We had grandmas and tias who provided lots of abrazos and lots of homemade treats to eat. And yeah, some of the driveways were made out of dirt because most of our parents weren't being paid enough to afford to lay pavement on the driveway. And some of the streets were made out of dirt because the city council didn't think anybody on our side of town had a car worth worrying about dents to. There I am in my first social protest. The newspaper came out to take a picture because the neighbors were complaining about the big charcos in the middle of the street. And so my mother said, I see, you can photograph her, but let me go put her nice dress on first. So in every picture of me that you see that they had 2 minutes warning for, before I was 6 years old, I'm wearing the same nice dress that Mama would pull out for these events in the middle of the charco. And the school playgrounds were made out of dirt. And even some of the coolest houses were made out of adobe dirt. And the kids lucked out on that side of town because so far from the city council's attention, we could get away with having chickens or a donkey in the backyard. And while lots of folks called us dirty Mexicans, we actually were told by our parents to stay clean and neat and dress up for school pictures or for 6th grade graduations, and to always be polite to las maestras, even though we knew they often punished us for speaking Spanish, for saying things like, necesito ir al baño, or córrele Juanito, or even quisiera aprender a hablar inglés. If you see the kids in the back against the wall, they were there for having done one of the worst things you could do to break the law at our school, and that was to let a word of Spanish slip out of their mouths during recess. My middle school principal would later say to me, as he overheard me in the hallway speaking Spanish, he would be nice, he didn't turn me in, he just said to me, you'll never get to high school speaking Spanish. But beyond the achaques de la vida and the criticones de la vida, I knew that we had a treasure. We had something inside our skin and hidden in the strength and the beauty of our cultura and our values and our relationships with family and friends. So after I got my bachelor's and my master's and eventually a PhD, I headed back to the barrio. And I began to write about what I saw and knew was there. Regardless of what others might criticize or make fun of, I felt there was a beauty to this barrio culture and this barrio experience. And my first book, co-authored with 2 Chicano poets you see here, Reyes Cárdenas and Cecilio Garcia Camarillo, I asked them to title it, Get Your Tortillas Together, because we needed to collect what was ours and document what was ours and get our tortillas together. I knew that we had tesoros, incredible treasures in our culture, in our barrios, in their abrazos, and in their familias, in the 10,000 primos we always seemed to have around, and in the way everybody eventually became part of the familia. I knew that we had a history. Our parents, primos, and our grandparents, primos, had been here, part of this country for hundreds of years, crossing over to ese lado, de este lado, de ese lado, de este lado, ese lado, but still part of what made this country. And when people had excluded us from their schools, we had made our own escuelitas and preserved our own stories and traditions. We were proud of who we were, and we knew how to celebrate. And this is what I wanted to write about how a culture survives against the odds, how people protect their cultural treasure in everything from family gatherings to the momentitos en la cocina, where the stories are told and the leyendas warm our imaginations. So I continued to write about the things that were not being written about. And when I was in my 30s, after having been published in textbooks and poetry books and journals and anthologies and even in city buses, but still not accepted quite in the mainstream trade publishers, I discovered that there was one piece of my work that had been published more than anything else, and it was a little tiny 10-line poem. It wasn't about New York, it wasn't about Central Park or important world issues. It was about an old woman and her mother in a tortilla shop. And I truly believe it was not successful just because good writers need to come either from Central Park or from a block with a tortilleria at the end of it. It was successful because it came from inside who I authentically was, and our best and our brightest and our most dynamic and our most successful does come from who we authentically are, each one of us. From the part of us that goes so deep it touches the spirit of Inlaquech in everyone. So I kept writing more, and I felt I needed to say something about that beautiful barrio and about just how much beauty is contained in any barrio or any neighborhood where the parents or the grandparents or the store cashier or the extended family members of that neighborhood try to make the world a beautiful place for that child and to surround the child with love and dreams and all the sensory delights of life. A place where the big velvet roses bloom red and pink and fuchsia, where the accordion plays sassy and sweet, where the smell of crispy tacos or buttery tortillas or juicy fruta floats out of every window, and where the paleta wagon rings its tinkly bell and carries a treasure of icy paletas in every color of the sarape, and where the children and their parents and their barrio and their cultures are finally seen for what they are, truly beautiful. But I could not have shared that without the transformative artistic magic of Magaly Morales' illustrations, or without the spiritual support and unconditional enthusiasm of my life partner, Dr. Ernesto Bernal, or without the significant consortium of dedicated professionals and librarians and readers who make sure that stories like this are noticed and recognized and get onto the shelves of libraries and into the hands of children. Gracias to the members of my professional barrio, my professional community, to each one of you, Inlaquech.
Okay, and next Andy is going to give the award to Magaly Morales.
Okay, can I have a hug? Thank you.
Good morning. Well, I'm going to read this because I'm a little bit nervous and I think my English, I'm not proud of my English yet, so it's easier for me to read it. I would have liked to not to have to do it, but I have to, I'm sorry. Well, when I was around 10, 11 years old, I saw a movie in the TV about a group of young people that made graffiti murals and painted their names with very original letters in the back of their black jackets. I had seen graffiti before, but this was wonderful. The colors, the shapes, the shadows, the lights. I was fascinated. There, at my 11 years old, my passion for the visual art was suddenly born. I wanted to do that. I didn't know how, nor did I know with what, but I had my color pencils and my school notebook. What else could I need? So I created the craziest letters that I could imagine, everyone different, with curves, with straight lines, ones above others, separated, rounded, square. I never had made a gradient or combination of colors. I didn't know anything about shadows and lights, but remembering the images, I started trying to copy what I have seen in the movie. I imitated going from dark green to light green, from red to orange to yellow, black for the shadows. But what about the light that they use for shines and spray rays? How could I make it with my simple color pencils? Yes, sure, with my mom's corrector. I had a scrawny, ugly brush, but that didn't discourage me. I became very skilled painting, fine streaks with the stiff tips of the ugly brush. I'm sorry, I don't have pictures for this part of my life. I would have liked to show you, but I used to give them away to everybody, so I have any of them. And now my artwork was ready. Since that day, I painted my name in every imaginable way. And when I got tired of painting my name, I began making my friends and acquaintances' name. I even had a waiting list. Yes, the designs with higher demand were those from friends who wanted their name next to their lovers. Yeah, so this is one of my first drawings. That I'm there with Yuji and our dog Tracy. And this is another example for the first thing I started doing. Shortly after, I started to imitate more complex images, more elaborate designs with lights and shadows, gradients and color mix, all of which I learned by myself and by observation. I also decided to make up my own ABCs, since I had a lot of self-made letters in all of the names I had made. I think I made up 3 or 4 alphabets that now I know they are called fonts and are very well paid. Although I never reached the C, it was very hard work for a kid of my age. This is another example of that time. Besides, I drew extravagant designs for clothes, and I wanted to make for myself. Although I never made clothes, I invented some crazy things to wear, like a couple of antennas made with a headset, wire, cardboard, and many colors. While walking in the street, kids would point at me and beg for a pair like mine. And their moms always came to ask where I had purchased them. During my whole adolescence, I explored my creativity with anything that caught my imagination. I also liked to write, and I would make bizarre stories based on my daily experiences. It seems like my mind never rested. In school, I was only interested in creative activities. My notebooks were another medium for creation. I made designs with paragraphs and letters. I would draw elaborate titles for each class subject. On one corner of the note, I would add a drawing of the head of the classmate in front of me, or anything to make more tolerable the class of mathematics or physics. And of course, I always choose painting and art workshops, or artes plásticas, like we call them in Mexico, in which, by the way, I never obtained the best grades. Some of my classmates who didn't draw very well got better grades than I did. Somehow my teachers had decided that I wasn't good enough in art, even though I have to say I already had been polishing my skills and practicing so much. These are some other things that I used to do. Later, by my sister Yuji's advice, I decided to study graphic design, a career previously unknown and very new in Mexico. And even though I had been practicing on my own for years, it was there that I discovered that even more than design, I love illustrations, and that even a creative, crazy person like me had a place in this world. But as I was about to finish the last year of school, I started a new romantic relationship and became a mom. That's Rodrigo, my oldest boy. Unfortunately, the relationship turned out abusive, and I went through a dark and difficult period in which I lost my way. I didn't know where I was and where I wanted to go. Unable to return to the school I love, I chose to study another career, physical education, and began working teaching elementary school children. And before I realized, I had left behind the magic of creating. A few years later, my sister Yuji immigrated to the United States and started developing as an illustrator. Whenever I would talk to her, she would tell me, Maggie, ponte a pintar, Maggie, go paint. And I would answer, voy corriendo, yes, I'm coming, with a tone of irony that reflected my doubts. But then one day, as Yuji was preparing to come to visit us in Mexico, she called to tell me, Maggie, I'm going to Mexico in 2 months. When I arrive, I want you to have some illustrations for me to bring them back and show them to my agent. She told me this so clear, like she believed that I could do it. Maybe it was time for me to believe it too. Finally, after many years, I decided to start painting again. I took a Mexican legend and with this inspiration illustrated 2 images with my colored pencils. When my sister arrived, she brought with her her two first books she had published, Harvesting Hope and Just a Minute. I opened the Señor Calavera book and I was stunned. The painting, the composition, the cleanness, the details. No, my illustration could not compare with hers. Mine were horrible. However, to my surprise, she liked them, and with a lot of confidence, she took them with her back to the USA. This is one of them. This is a legend called Tajín. We are working now in this book again with some changes. This is the other one that I made at that time. 2 weeks later, Charlotte Sheedy, her agent, was phoning me to ask me to be represented by her agency. I continued, little by little, creating new illustrations for my portfolio. These are some of the first images I made for my portfolio. And 2 years later, arrived my first contract. The book was Chabela and the Magic Bubble by Monica Brown. After that, A Piñata in a Pine Tree by Pat Mora. And shortly after, What Can You Do with a Paleta by Carmencita Tafolla. Nevertheless, by many circumstances, La Paleta was the first one published. This experience had been so healthy, so healing, that once I started painting and creating again, I found my way in many other areas of my life too. I took a master's degree in Gestalt psychotherapy, and now I am practicing psychotherapy. I started studying English again. I came back to practicing sports, which I always loved. I became a professor, and now I teach young adults who will become PE teachers. After many years of being a single mother, I meet a dreamy, it's getting out of the room, but it's okay. I meet a dreamy, lovely, gallant, brave, smart, and very gorgeous man, Isael. And together we are growing a beautiful family. And here we are, Rodrigo, Quetzali, Isael, and I, the Rodriguez Morales family. When I started to use my creativity again, I left my shell and came out to breathe the fresh air of this world. Painting, drawing, color management, and above all, the creation have always been a passion for me. I'm transformed by the creative art. It makes me get into other worlds and connect with energies bigger than me. But I never thought that this magical condition could coexist with reality. I never thought that my creations had any value. I never thought that I could take it to a professional level. I never thought that an agency in the United States would represent me. I never thought that a publisher would give me a contract. I never thought that being Mexican, I could publish out of my country. And I never, ever thought that somebody would give me an award for my drawings and paintings. I'm very happy to be here with you today, with my husband, my children, my wonderful mother, my talented sister, lovely Michelle, and my family that is not here but are in spirit, my talented sister Yuji, my brother Mario Alejandro, and my great father Eligio. My family is the seed of my work, the mother of my life, and the road toward my dreams. Here we are all together. From this root, a larger family grows. It is all of you. You. The inspiration is born from the heart of one individual, but with an invisible thread connected to the wisdom of every person in this life. We together are the authors of the beauty of this world. Carmen, you are a very special woman. I feel honored to have shared this with you. And you predicted very well the coming of all these events. Do you remember? Thanks to all of you. I hope we see each other again soon. By the way, Yuyi has been now telling me, Maggie, ponte a escribir, Maggie, go write. So we'll see what comes in the future. Gracias.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I was moved to tears, so forgive me. Thank you so much. My name is Ruth Quiroa, and while we're setting this up, I'll go ahead and get started. But my name is Ruth Quiroa, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to introduce Julia Alvarez. Julia is an author who is able to reach a wide range of readers, from kindergarten through adult, and her works include novels, poetry, realistic and historical fiction, picture books, bilingual picture books, intermediate chapter books, and young adult novels. Some of the books she has written for children and adults include these are picture books, The Secret Footprints, The Gift of Gracias, The Legend of Altagracia, The Best Gift of All, The Legend of la Vieja Belén, El Mejor Regalo del Mundo, La Leyenda de la Vieja Belén. She's also written 2 intermediate books for grades 3 through 7, with one more due in 2007 about the infamous Tia Lola. We see a lot of humor in her work as well. She has 3 young adult novels, Before We Were Free, Finding Miracles, and our focal book, Return to Sender, published in 2009. She has also written 1 adult novel that has been embraced by young adults and high school teachers alike. My daughter even read it last year, namely In the Time of Butterflies, published in 1994. Julia's books have been published in at least 13 different languages, in 17 countries, including 4 Spanish-speaking countries, in addition to the Spanish language editions in the U.S., so namely Mexico, Spain, Argentina, and the Dominican Republic. Julia has received numerous awards, including the F. Scott Fitzgerald Award for Outstanding Achievement in American Literature in 2009. She was born in New York, but grew up in the Dominican Republic until she was 10 years old, at which time her family escaped the dictator and moved back to Brooklyn. Although the return to the U.S. was filled with homesickness, as reported in my research, particularly for her cousins, Julia threw herself into reading and eventually into writing. She completed her undergraduate degree at Middlebury College in Vermont and her master's degree in creative writing at Syracuse University. She then became an English professor at Middlebury College and began publishing collections of poetry and essays. Her first 2 novels, published in the early 1990s, titled How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent and In the Time of Butterflies, gained considerable recognition and praise. She then gave up her position at Middlebury in order to devote herself to writing, although the college offered her a post as writer-in-resident, where she still remains today. Julia's website reports that she enjoys opportunities for occasional teaching, visiting classes, giving readings, and advising young writers at the college, and how fortunate those students are. Julia's deep love for the Dominican Republic is evident in many of her books and in her life work. Some important themes in her books include identity and language and issues around assimilation to a new country. Together with social justice, strong female protagonists, the importance of bearing witness to injustices, such as that of the dictatorship in the Dominican Republic, or is experienced by undocumented immigrants, particularly farm laborers in the U.S. In addition, Julia and her husband Bill own an organic coffee farm in the Dominican Republic, which further exemplifies a commitment to bring about positive change through the provision of fair and living wages for farmers, and the protection of the environment and traditional ways of farming. During my research, I also noticed that the art and illustrations in several of her picture books and a nonfiction book are produced by Dominican artists. As for our book today, Return to Sender, I listened to Julia share her thoughts about the seed for its creation on a teacher-student resource website titled teachingbooks.net that is accessed by thousands of teachers around the country, in the world probably. Prior to this, I wondered how she was able to shift from writing books which focus primarily on experiences related specifically to her own cultural background and the Dominican Republic to European American farmers and undocumented Mexican farmers in Vermont. I learned that the local public schools in her home state of Vermont began to seek her assistance with translation for children of Mexican migrant workers. These workers came to the U.S. because they were unable to profit from their farms in Mexico and now milk cows for many Vermont dairy farms, a service without which small farmers would not survive given the high cost of farming and the lack of workers in the region. Julia noted that Mexicans living in these regions of Vermont were highly visible because there were so few living there in that state. Because of this, they were afraid to leave the farms and often had to live underground lives. The children of Mexican heritage in these schools and their European American classmates were experiencing high levels of confusion about these issues, while the Latino children also lived in constant fear of government raids. In particular, they worried about the possible arrest and deportation of their parents, that they would go home from school to an empty house, or to see their parents taken away in front of their eyes. All of these experiences led to the creation of Return to Sender, which was titled after the actual name of INS raids. Our text, Return to Sender, is narrated in alternating points of view from the perspectives of 11-year-old Tyler, whose father was injured in a dairy farm accident, and Mari, whose family is illegal and works as migrant workers on this farm. The initial uncomfortable interdependence between the two families gives way to mutual understandings and respect, tempered by the pain and fear both feel toward the potential political ramifications of their situations, as well as the stress at the disappearance of Mari's mother during her attempt to return to the U.S. by crossing the Mexican border. Notably, all of the characters in this compelling book must face real and important humanistic issues related to undocumented immigration, which serve as challenges to the efficacy and morality of U.S. immigration policy and laws. As such, they are forced to stretch and make choices leading to new growth and insights. This book provides readers the opportunity to see through the eyes of two young people deeply touched by these economic and political issues, as well as personal tragedies that are everyday realities for so many students in the U.S. Other themes in this book are presented symbolically, such as the images of swallows traveling between countries and of going beyond physical, political, cultural, and linguistic barriers. This book is a particularly important book for teachers who may not have a strong background knowledge in these areas, but whose school districts and classrooms are experiencing ever-increasing numbers of Latino students each year. Therefore, on behalf of the Review Committee for the Americas Award for Children's and Young Adult Literature, I'm most pleased to present Julia Alvarez to you today as the author of this timely book for our students, teachers, and parents. Thank you. And Andy, where is our presenter? Want to come forward? Come this way. That way we can. We'll let you get here. Come right over here so we can take some. Thank you. Let's get you up here. What's the title of yours? This one?
Return to Sender. Yo no tengo, no, I don't have any pictures for you.
That's fine.
I didn't know we could do this, but I so enjoyed both of the presentations. So they were wonderful. Thank you both. And Magaly, I know English, and I still wrote a speech because I get nervous when I get here. And I've been writing books probably before you were born, but I still get nervous. And actually, the only show and tell I have is that every time I get up to give a speech, I have my father's handkerchief that he gave me once to wipe my tears. So this reminds me that sometimes there can be tears of happiness. So that's my show and tell. And when I get up to give a speech and I don't have it with me, I just get even more scared. So anyhow, I want to thank the National Consortium for Latin American Studies Programs class for co-awarding my novel Return to Sender the Americas Award for 2010. I'm one of 4 sisters. The first 3 of us born 11 months apart. We were known as the triplets in the Dominican Republic. So I always feel more comfortable sharing the stage with sisters. So it's a special pleasure to share this award in this moment with Carmen and Magaly and Lynn, who are Magaly and Carmen being honored for their glorious picture book, What Can You Do with a Paleta? Additionally, Magaly, I've shared several prizes with your own sister, Judy Morales, so it's wonderful to be here with you and Carmen. And I have to be careful when I pick up my award that I don't pick yours up. I don't know if Judy told you, when we won the Pura Belpre Award together, I got home and she got home. She had my medal and I had her medal. So we had to exchange them. Also, I'd like to give class a belated thank you for awarding my novel Before We Were Free, the Americas Award in 2002. I was not here, was not able to come that year to the ceremony, so I'm doubly grateful that I could be now with you in person. Your consortium has been consistently strong and very important supporters to me and other authors. I am very grateful to be with you and honored to be here. So that's the good news. Very good news indeed when one of your books wins a prize. But there is a bad side to winning. You have to write a speech. Believe it or not, I dread speech writing. As the day for this award ceremony approached, I emailed Julie Klein and confessed that speeches are the hardest things to write! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Julie very nicely wrote back, would you like to tell a story instead? So Julie, where are you? I'm taking you up on your invitation. And this morning, I want to tell you a story about Return to Sender that I've kept to myself. At first I thought, oh, come on. Why rain, not just on someone else's parade, but on your own parade? But as I've seen the craziness mounting in this fall election season, and I'm so glad that a week from now, there will be a rally right here in Washington, D.C. to restore sanity, I just couldn't keep quiet anymore. So here's a story I've long wanted to tell about writing Return to Sender. First, some background, some of which Ruth gave you, so I'm going to race through it. The novel is based very much on my own experiences working with undocumented Mexican migrant families in Vermont. In 1988, when I accepted a job at Middlebury College, I used to joke that I was moving to the Latino compromised state of Vermont. In the year 2000, there were 5,004 people of Hispanic origin in all of Vermont. In fact, we are the state with the smallest Latino population. But in the last 10 years, we've seen a big change in the state, specifically on our Vermont dairy farms. I don't have to tell you that small farms are in trouble. And with the price of milk at an all-time low, many dairy farmers are going out of business. Vermont has lost more than 250 dairy farms in the past 5 years, and they're going under this year at a rate of about 6 a month. Many farmers can't afford to hire the help they need, or even if they could, they can't find local workers willing to do the round-the-clock, hard job of milking at the a dairy herd, 24/7. Every 8 to 10 hours, cows have to be milked. So more and more dairy farmers have resorted to hiring Mexican migrant workers. Many of these workers are undocumented. Some come with wives and children, and their families continue to grow here, so that some of the children are Mexican nationals and some are USA citizens. I know it's an old story elsewhere in many border states, urban centers, in the Midwest, but this story got to our dairy state of Vermont about 10 years ago. So our Latino compromised state has begun to change. Now, just in my county, Addison County, we have 500 undocumented Mexican workers and their families. As you can imagine, this influx of Spanish speakers is something the state wasn't prepared for. So often, I get calls from the open door clinic or the hospital, the schools, to come translate for doctors, teachers, administrators, and my local farmer neighbors. I've spent the most time in our local elementary school working with the Vermont farm kids and the new Mexican and Mexican American arrivals. Out of these experiences came the genesis of my novel, Return to Sender. It's told from 2 points of view, alternating chapters. One is Mari, a young Mexican girl, 11 going on 12, whose family comes to work on a Vermont dairy farm that is on the brink of being sold. Mari was born in Mexico, but her 2 little sisters were born in the States. The farm where her father and uncles work is owned by Tyler's family. Tyler, the farm boy, also 11 going on 12, is my other point of view. And as for the title, Return to Sender, as you heard, it refers not to the post office stamp on letters with incorrect addresses, but to the dragnet operation carried out by the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement in 2006, in which workplaces were raided and undocumented workers seized and sent back to their home countries. Under Operation Return to Sender, farms in Vermont were raided, the undocumented workers seized, and in many cases, the children were left behind with farm families not knowing what to do, and then calling Julia, like I knew. You don't have to be an experienced storyteller to figure out that in the course of a story about Mexican workers on a Vermont farm, there will probably be a raid by the Department of Homeland Security's agents. Actually, the branch that does the raiding is known as ICE, wonderful detail for a writer, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So when I got to that point in writing the novel where the raid was happening, I had to find out from the Department of Homeland Security's ICE office what to do with the children of these undocumented Mexican migrant workers once their parents have been taken away. So as any good writer knows, you have to research the details even in a fictional story. So I called up the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, pretty clueless, I know. I called their 800 number and was soon lost in the entrails of voicemails. Finally, I decided, hey, I live in Vermont, a small hands-on rural state. I'll just call our Department of Homeland Security office up in St. Albans. I ended up talking to a Mr. Michael Gilhooly, Northeast Regional Spokesman for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. After giving me the 3rd degree, who was I? Why did I need this information? Who was my employer? He told me he couldn't reveal that information to me. I needed to go to the FOIA website, the Freedom of Information Act website, and inform myself on what kind of information I had a right to ask for. Then go on the DHS website and download an application that I had to submit in order to be evaluated and approved to learn what I needed to know. I had 3 little characters waiting in the middle of a novel for what was going to happen to them. Writers, and by extension their fictional characters, have to be patient, persistent souls. So again, I went online, and this time I found myself lost in the labyrinthine website of the Freedom of Information Act FOIA website. One afternoon, when I was fed up, I decided to call the Vermont DHS office again, hoping that Mr. Gilhooly had taken the day off and that I'd get someone else who would just give me the information I needed. No luck. I got Mr. Gilhooly again, and this time he wanted the name of my supervisor at the college. Earlier, I had told Mr. Gilhooly that I worked at Middlebury College to make myself sound less threatening and more substantial, but really I was calling him in my capacity as a self-employed writer. Now, Mr. Gilhooly threatened to call and report me to my supervisor for continuing to disregard the procedures of the DHS and the laws of the land. I told Mr. Gilhooly that I was just asking for simple, straightforward information that any citizen had a right to know. After we both poured a little more smoke from our nostrils, fuming, he finally shunted me to Bobby Faye Ferguson, Director, Office of Multimedia at the National Office in Washington, D.C. of the DHS. I should email her my appeal. So here's the email that I sent her. November 1st, 2007. Dear Bobby Ferguson, Mike Gilhooly of our Vermont ICE office gave me your email in hopes that you might be able to answer a question I have, as I've not found anyone who can give me this information. I am working on a young adult novel about a farm family whose illegal Mexican migrant workers are deported. However, in the novel, these farmers have 3 children, some of whom were born in the USA and are therefore citizens. My question, as part of the plot, is what happens to those kids? What would be the procedure? I need to know in order to make the plot credible and realistic. I got an email reply with 2 attachments. November 1st, 2007. Dear Ms. Alvarez, I am so glad that Mr. Michael Gilhooly provided you with my email address so that you will have the correct information regarding how DHS works with requests such as yours. This office serves as the liaison to movies, television, books, videos, and other multimedia type projects. I have attached a copy of the DHS Management Directive number 2231, which explains the department's policy, and a questionnaire to be completed and returned to this office. We will review your requests once the completed questionnaire is returned. Sincerely, Bobby Faye Ferguson, Director, Office of Multimedia, DHS. So, the attachment, Directive 2231, consisted of 10 single-space pages outlining the policies of the Department of Homeland Security that one must abide by in order to qualify to receive information. After reading it, I had to fill out a questionnaire, and among the questions was provide a script, treatment, story, or outline of the project in sufficient detail to allow the department to evaluate the project's objectives and how DHS is necessary for the project. Another, identify the distributor or publisher or other outlet, where and when will the project be released or published, etc. And then this was the clincher at the end. Please include a statement that the requester has read and will comply with all the principles and provisions of the Department of Homeland Security Management Directive 2231. Move over, Arizona. Lynn mentioned that we have to protect democracy, to keep it alive. You don't have to go to Latin America. We're in it. So where are we? 1950? Joe McCarthy world? So this is the letter I wrote back to dear Mrs. Ferguson. Miss Ferguson, I am writing a young adult novel. The parents are deported. What would be the procedure? I'm just summarizing. This is not a security matter or an investigative piece to make me jump through so many hoops to find out something so ridiculously simple. Information that should just be available to all of us informed citizens is bizarre and troubling. As for this statement that I had to sign before they could release any information, as a writer, my responsibility is to tell the truth according to my characters, not sign on to allow any organization to censor or compromise what I write. So at this point, I withdraw my request, but I must say I am discouraged by this kind of response by agencies whom I support as a taxpayer. But beyond that, I'm troubled with what this means for this nation, as I've always felt the best protection for a free country is an informed citizenry. So what did I end up doing? I have these 3 characters stuck in the middle of the novel. I felt as if I had wandered into a back room of our democracy that I wouldn't have believed existed had it not happened to me. I was stunned, distracted, couldn't get back to work. It looked like my 3 characters were going to be permanently stuck in the middle of an abandoned novel. But I knew those 3 characters represented real kids I had worked with at our local schools, kids all around the United States. And I was a citizen like the rest of you, suddenly face to face with something very rotten, and not in the state of Denmark, but here. You let a little thing like this go, and another little freedom here, and another there, and one day you find yourself in a country you don't want to live in, like the Trujillo dictatorship in the Dominican Republic that we had left behind in 1960 to come to this country. Finally, I found a way to get the information I needed. Someone who knew someone, who knew someone, who knew someone at the ICE office agreed to talk to me if I would keep his name and details of our meeting confidential. I went back to my characters and tried to stay focused on my novel. I knew finishing the book would be my act of protest, but I also promised myself that one day, when I got the chance to tell readers the story, I would do so. Lucky you. If this were an isolated incident of the narrowing down of our American civil liberties, I would just think it was one writer's bad luck with a bureaucracy. But all around us, and we were talking about Arizona at breakfast this morning, all around us, especially in this fall election season, we're seeing the closing down of the American imagination. Immigration reform, especially as in a sorry state, raids, deportations, draconian laws like that, those in Arizona and in Fremont, Nebraska, my husband's home state, are really making some of us question what kind of nation we are living in that forgets its own immigrant past. This is truly the civil rights struggle of our times, one we are engaged in as a nation. Your America's Awards are an important vote of confidence in our literature at a critical moment in our history. More than about my book or Carmen's and Magaly's, Lynn's books, the America's Awards are your way of saying, yes, we do. We need all these stories to help us understand what is happening to us as a nation. Your awards are a way of calling attention to stories and storytellers that might otherwise be deported from the shelves of American literature. From the bottom of my heart, and mi corazón, I thank you for keeping alive the great democracy of reading, the winged life of the imagination, the dwelling impossibility, which is what Emily Dickinson claimed our poems and stories allow us all to do. And please, get out and vote. And remember this story when you are wondering who to vote for, what kind of country you want us all to be living in. So, thank you.
I have described this event every year, usually just picking one word, heartfelt. For several months, it consists of emails and papers and forms and phone calls and arrangements and logistics and hotels and then all of you come together in one room, and it's a lovely thing. So I thank you all for being a part of today, and congratulations again to Magaly, Carmen, Julia. I wanted to comment, where two of our members of our committee, Crystal Foster from Arizona and Jamie Naidu, University of Alabama, this was their last year on the committee. They've been wonderful voices to have in and among the many perspectives we have in determining the awards and commended lists every year. So thank you once again. Hollis Rudiger, also not here, was a student of Julia's at Middlebury College, so she was also very disappointed not to be with us today. In addition to Denise, next year we have another new member of the committee, Hope Crandall, who's a school librarian, Washington Elementary in Oregon. So we'll have some new faces for you next time around. Just please enjoy the pastry and the coffee still there. We don't want to waste. Thank you all for coming. I also wanted to let you know there's some other literature back there. Lynn brought some handouts back there you may want to look at, and also the Teatro de la Luna play tonight from Venezuela. They have their postcards as well. Thank you all for being with us.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.